I got some requests on reviewing my machines, especially my old Macintoshes, and I thought that's a good idea. I've had this PowerMac G4 for almost 7 years now. This was one of my first vintage Mac purchases. In my crappy videos back then, you could even see an unboxing of it, and yes, I still have that box somewhere, so this is one of the machines where I still have the original box, which is cool. Also, it is one of my favorite Macintoshes, also one of my favorite tower designs. Apple really outdid themselves, and that's no exaggeration. I think this still looks pretty good. While it might look a little retro with the glossy Apple logo and stuff, I mean, it's still looking so freaking good. If you compare that to PCs of the era, look at those PCs. Those are kind of from the era, maybe a little newer even, and they just look garbage. I mean, I'm not a Mac fanboy, not at all. But look at this, and then look at this. I mean, it's just so beautiful. Now, this was the second iteration of PowerMac G4s. This is a little confusing to people who are not familiar with vintage Macs, but there was the PowerMac G3, which was blue and white. I really want to get one of those. They look just so nice, but that was the previous PowerMac, and then they introduced an all-new line of PowerMac G4s. The previous PowerMac G4 still sort of looked like the G3, just gray. But then they redesigned it with this design, which was called Quicksilver. And after this, there was another PowerMac G4 called Mirror Drive Doors, also redesigned, and had shiny doors, which looked like a mirror. That's why the name, MDD. It's a real name for it, not just a mock-up of the community. Now I have here this in-between model. It is the most in-between you could get, because from the power configurations you could get this with a 733 megahertz single core processor with 128 megs of RAM, all the way up to a dual core 1 gigahertz chip with 512 megabytes of RAM. A dual core chip was a pretty big deal in 2001. Now this was kind of the professional Mac at the time. It was a tower design, so you could upgrade it. I will show you, of course, around it. And before that, I will also tell you that this was kind of killing the G4 Cube, because at the time there was also this really good looking Mac which was called the G4 Cube, and it had a 450 megahertz G4, and it was a little more limited to upgrade. It was still upgradable, but it, compared to this, it was very limited, and it was also way more expensive. So people rather bought one of those than spending that much money on a Cube, which is, you know, sort of underpowered compared to this. I have here the 933 megahertz model, so almost 1 gigahertz. Apple is never really sure about their clock speeds. They always have weird clock speeds. Single core, and I have no idea about RAM because I upgraded this back and forth. And over the years, you know, so much has changed that this is by no means a stock configuration. Also, I swapped out the GPU because the GPU was dead at one point, but I replaced it with another PowerMac G4 GPU, so it is, you could still say it's sorta original. Now if you go around the back here, you will find some ports. Now we have here just the, you know, regular ports. We got a power input, we got a headphone jack and a smashed up microphone jack, which is unfortunate. A dial-up modem, people used that at the time, not really anymore, but they used it. A Ethernet port, 2 5R400 ports, find that very useful still. 2 USB 1 ports, so yeah, it's a little slow. And the graphics card. And if you're wondering what weird connector is that on the left, that is of course Apple's egoism. Now, what I say here is, on the right we got a regular DVI. That's not a big deal, but this left one is a, of course, proprietary Apple connector, and it powers their own monitor. So to have the ultimate Apple setup from 2001, I would need a Apple Studio display This connector also powers the display, so when you hook up your studio display to this, you don't need an external power cord, which is a great idea actually. And yeah, so other than that, it's just a video connection. Now, by far my favorite feature of this PowerMac I will demonstrate right now. Right now it's closed, but when you want to get inside of it, there's no door you need to take off or screw off or something with pentalobe screws as they do nowadays. No. All you do is you pull this latch towards you. It's making little squeaky noises because it's old. And then this whole thing comes off and it folds down. And there you have it. There is your entire computer. How cool is that? Now, in the entire computer industry, I haven't seen a single computer that does it like this, folding down the mainboard. Now, I know that Dell also had a pretty cool design in 01, 02 with their Pentium 4 computers, where it would kind of also flip it up and have the entire machine, but not like this. Like the old Optiplexes, if you want to know, Google it. I also want to get one of those because I think they're cool. I think Apple has patented this way, so nobody else can do it like this, but you gotta say, it's a pretty cool design. Now, if you look in here, you will find, of course, Apple style, a lot of proprietary stuff. Let's start on the top here. That is still pretty regular. That's actually very regular, and so regular, in fact, that I've changed it out 4 times or even more. In here is the optical drive. I have absolutely no idea what it was, if it was a CD drive stock, if it was a DVD drive, I have no idea, but all I know is that it broke and I replaced it with a standard PC IDE optical drive. So now it has a DVD burner drive, just a regular IDE optical drive. Now beneath here, that's not a floppy drive. Oh no. Well, there's nothing in here, I know, sorry. But there should be a zip drive in here. Now, a zip drive is, of course, a different style floppy, and I have no idea about zip drives, so if you can enlighten me, please tell me what the difference is, other than the size. Maybe it's faster, maybe it has more storage, I have no idea. And yes, here is supposed to go a screw, and I have no idea why it isn't there. But from the million projects I've taken this apart, stuff like this just happens, so I eventually have to replace that. Now, this is all very nice and organized, but one thing that disturbs me a little bit here with this engineering flow and this amazing machine is this little thing here. Now, that's not a mistake by me, like squishing this cable in between here. That would look like me, but no, this is eventually how it came, because, you know, this big ass fan here needs a power cord, obviously, and they just decided it is the best idea to route it here on the front. Now, as I said, they do all these crazy latches and these crazy mechanisms and engineering routing skills, but here they just cut out a notch and then route this cable through. I mean, it really literally looks like one of the engineers forgot about that and it was like, screw that, we'll just cut it out and it'll be fine. Now, yes, it is really, really a high-class problem, and nobody really would care about that, but I care about it. Before we get into all the proprietary stuff on this machine, and because it's from Apple, yeah, there is a lot of stuff, as always, we will first talk about the power supply. I am indeed not sure if this is proprietary or not. It really looks like a standard ATX power supply from the time, to me, but if I'm wrong, please tell me. I thankfully did never have to replace that, and it has a really loud and annoying fan. Now this computer is not quiet as it is, but this fan in this is just insanely annoying. I might replace that just because it's so loud. And its strength is 120 watts, which is, yeah, pretty common for the time. Yeah, it looks to me just like a regular ATX power supply, and it's made by AC Bell. Proprietary stuff. Now let's start with the mainboard, of course. That's nothing special. A lot of other manufacturers do that too. HP does it, Dell does it, Acer does it. You know, everybody does that. That's fine. But the graphics card? Now this is an old graphics card, and I have no idea what it is, but when we turn it on, we'll find out. But this is a Mac branded graphics card. So if you are like one of those retro computer enthusiasts who has got a ton of old Pentium 4s or 3s or something laying around, and you decide that you stick one of those graphics cards from the PCs in here, nay, it's not gonna work. You will need a freaking Mac branded graphics card. Now, they actually never stopped this stupid shit with having proprietary GPUs. They did this game until the last Mac Pro 2010 came out, you know? So, I don't know why they do this. Just to earn money. Because it's the same GPU like from any other PC, but because it's for an Apple product, it of course must cost way more. And so that's why it's not so easy to find graphics cards replacement for this. Now, you can flash for Mac, but I've never done this before. I have no idea how hard it is, and I actually don't want to find out, but I think I have to do that one day. So next up here is the processor cooler, which on a first glance it looks like it is passively cooled. Not very efficient on a machine that's supposed to be for professionals. You know, it's gonna get hot and toasty, but no, Apple thought of that, and they sticked a tiny little fan in here in this tunnel. And this is the CPU fan? Well, sorta, because it just basically transports air out of it. So in the back you got here some vents, and here goes the processor heat out. Now there's no fan on the front, so all that's keeping this pretty much cool, other than this transporting the air out of it, is this fan right here. This is apparently so good engineered that it can suck up the air and kind of push things out. Now, I have really no idea how this is possible, because I don't see a fan actually blowing air into it. So this is just sucking air out here and pushing it out of here. Or maybe, just maybe, this is sucking it in and kind of pushing it up here, and then this transports it out again. I don't know. It's really weird, and man, it works, but I don't understand the system behind it. Now, of course, Apple is Apple, and they could really never go any normal way on processor mounting. So the G4 is, of course, on its own circuit board. So if you want to replace the CPU, you have to take off the cooler, of course, but also replace this whole circuit board. This is the processor. There's not just one processor unit, there's this entire circuit board where this cooler sits on, and you plug this into main board, and you know, that's what the processor is. It's very weird. Here we have the power for the CPU fan. Here we have the CMOS battery, which we replaced, so this is brand new. And here is the RAM. Now, how much RAM do you think this can take? Well, 1.5 gigabytes. Doesn't sound that impressive today, but for an 01 machine, where most computers had like 64 max, 128 max, 256 was a big deal, I think. That was, you know, quite future-proof. And also the G3 from 1998 could take that much RAM, which is really cool. This, for example, is a Compact Desk Pro Yen, a Pentium 3 from 2000, and it can only take 512 megabytes of RAM. Now, back here behind the GPU, we have, unfortunately unused in this case, 4 PCI 64-bit slots. So, now what I would do is, I would, for example, order a USB 2.0 expansion card from Amazon and just put it in here, and then I have USB 2. And that's what these things are intended to do. Also, you could do all sorts of stuff. Plug in an audio card, plug in whatever you want. Anything for PCI that works. What's also pretty darn cool for this old computer is that it has Wi-Fi. Yes, this is a desktop machine from 01, and it has Wi-Fi. Now, I have to say that it didn't have its stock. When I got this machine, it had no airport card, but I used to own a iBook G3, and they used this same airport card with the same antenna layout. and it would work. Now, unfortunately, though, this old airport card doesn't work with most modern routers, which is unfortunate. But nevertheless, you had Wi-Fi. Now going up here close in the front, we have Apple's beloved doors to hide things away that's disturbing the amazing design. I'm not really the biggest fan of it. It looks very cool, but when you want to get inside the optical drive like a normal person, you can't, because then you have to kind of pry this away. I found that it's kind of giving in a little bit here, and you can kind of stick your finger in here and then have it open, and then you have to fiddle around there with a knife or whatever to get the button. It really sucks. Now, why am I telling you this? Now, Apple thinks it's a good idea that you power on the machine and hold down the mouse button to give it out, or you boot up any freaking operating system and press the eject button on the keyboard or click on the eject key in the taskbar. It is annoying, but that's the way Apple wants it. And then it comes out. But when you have no OS on here and the USB mouse is kind of not recognized and it just doesn't open up, it's really annoying. Again, here is the blank zip drive input tray thing, whatever it is. Power button is here. I don't know what that little guy is. That is probably the programmer's button to get inside of OpenFirmware, the BIOS for these machines, or maybe it is that. I have actually no idea. And it's kind of sad that I own this machine for almost 7 years and I still don't know what these buttons are for. Down here we got a little speaker, which sounds astonishing for such a small speaker inside a desktop machine. Definitely better than any speaker I've heard in any desktop tower. That's really everything from the out and inside. Now you have these amazing handles that first of all look cool, but you also can grab them and move the Mac around. And for the people who thought that, oh no, everybody can get inside of this machine and steal everything inside of it. No, Johnny Ive thought of that, or however he did that. You have this little thing that comes out, this latch, and Apple loves their latches, we found that out. Now in this latch here, you would stick a lock, like for anything, like for a door or whatever, just a normal lock, and lock it, and then when it is locked, you should do a little getaway to keep it locked. Wait a minute. Alright, the machine is now locked. You would not be able to pull this latch anymore. That's a pretty smart idea. So, other than with destroying it, there's no way getting inside this machine anymore. And it's open again. Now, you could, in fact, put up to 3 hard drives in here, which was pretty cool. So you would put one here and one here on top of all these wires, which are nicely tucked away and have never been touched since the machine was made, which is pretty awesome when you think about that, other than this cable, which has been touched a million times. I think that they even had a smaller cable that goes from here to here, but I replaced that with this longer IDE cable for some reason. And it should be screwed down, which is not the case right here. Now this is not the original hard drive for it. This is a MacStore 80 gig hard drive. And I think this also shipped with a 40 gig hard drive. Or of course could have been an 80 gig. But it was a MacStore, I remember that. That's a coincidence, but this came out of a PC. I unfortunately don't know if Apple gave you these plates, these trays where the drive is sitting on. Yeah, it's. I know I'm unprofessional, but I don't know if they gave you one of those spares to, you know, upgrade one of your drives. No, wait a minute, that's terrible right now. Now, if you would do this correctly, you would first screw in all the screws right here, and then you would set it down into these 2 holes where you can see there is a latch. Yep, they really love their latches, as I said. And then you will kind of set it down, and it is just so perfectly set now. And then, before you hook everything up, you would screw it down right there. and then you would hook up your cables and you're done. Now I never do this because I swap out the hard drives pretty often and it doesn't get moved around at all, so I don't care about that, but it was a pretty nice concept after all. So without further ado, let's hook this up to a monitor and mouse and keyboard and power it on. Now here are the original keyboard and mouse for the PowerMac G4, even though I own a couple of these things. Now this is called the Pro Keyboard and Mouse. Now the keyboard is fine, I have no complaints about this, except that it has this very small cable. It's very short, and like I think most people would use a desktop PC like standing next to the desk or something like that. But if you do that, there's no way this is gonna reach. Like here, it's standing right next to it, but it's not reaching it. I don't know what Apple thought when they make these short keyboard cables. Now it never really stopped. They have this very small short cable also on, for example, later USB keyboards. But you know, that's easily fixable when you have one of those USB extension cables. So what you would do is, and when you have that plugged in, the problem is solved. I think Apple mice are atrocious. All of them, period. I think they're terrible designs, and I would prefer any PC mouse over it any day. But it's looking cool. That's one good thing. It has this see-through plastic with this black, and they also have this in white. And it has only one button and these weird side buttons that I don't know what they were intended to be used for, but they're there. Yeah, it doesn't have a bowl anymore, but it isn't even that ergonomic, even though this is the better version. They have in the iMac G3s, they had a hockey puck mouse. I also have one of those, and it's round and it's just awful to use. So I don't know who thought that this is a good idea. I want to have my left and right click, but yeah, Apple never really was about that, and also no mouse wheel, so that's why I use a run-of-the-mill normal Microsoft mouse on my Apple computers. But for this video, for completion, we will use all the amazing, astonishing accessories that you got with your PowerMac G4 back in the day. Also, I have to correct, this is a 2002 machine, not 2001, 2002. They introduced this style in 01, but when these new processors came around, which mine has, they have the 2002 model year. What's also new in this processor gen is that they support hard drives larger than 128 gigabytes, which is pretty handy. Now, without further ado, let's start it up and see how it runs. Yep, it's not the most silent machine. Now, all of those noises, they come from different things. First thing is this big fan here that makes a lot of noise. The power supply fan makes also a ton of noise, and this little fan even makes noise. And on top of that, you still have the hard drive growling away. So this is surely not a silent machine, and I have no idea if you could make this any silent. Maybe one day I will look into it, and I'm happy to replace this worn out big fan with maybe a big silent one from Noctua or something, but yeah, maybe. Now, we haven't talked about software just a bit in this video, and you know that this channel is all about operating systems. So right now it has its latest version it can run. It is macOS Leopard 10.5. Now, back in the days, it would either come with Puma, which was 10.1, but this O2 machine could have also been shipped with Jaguar, which is 10.2. And unfortunately, I don't have the discs for it. I have everything. I have the box, even a description thing, but I don't have the original operating system discs, which suck. But yeah, so I could even have come with OS 9 which would have been cool that I can show you, but Leopard doesn't support that anymore. Over the years, you had some operating system updates. You had, when you started off on Jaguar, you had Panther and Tiger, and I can confirm that those two versions ran pretty darn sweet on this machine. So with Leopard here, it is surely not as fast anymore. And if you want to use this productively, you have to put it on Tiger. There it really flies. It doesn't need that much RAM. And it's just overall so fast. But on Leopard, that's the latest it can run. And it's, you know, it's definitely not the best operating system choice. Leopard was, after all, developed mostly for Intel machines and was the last PowerPC supported OS. So yeah, it really needs a little faster CPU to make it quick and usable. This 1 GB of RAM surely helps Leopard to make it run a little faster. Here we have the 933 MHz G4. And now let's see what we got for a GPU. We got a Radeon 9000 Pro. That's not the original GPU. The original GPU that's should have been in here, I think I threw it away after it died, was a GeForce 4MX. Yeah, I've no idea. It has 64 megs of VRAM, and this has also, but it's a Radeon 9K Pro. Back in the days, I used to run Skype on this. I used to run Microsoft Office and even some other cool stuff. I even used this. I remember, like way ago, I had this as my main machine, and when it was doing something intense, I would leave it alone and run Skype and stuff like this on this PowerMac, and it was so cool. It was an experience. It's pretty decent, still performing for such an old machine on a new operating system for it. Back then, you know, Apple didn't release an OS X every year. They released it not so often, and so the upgrades were kind of more, you know what I mean? There were something special every release. So they mostly had redesigned it also in the first versions, like from version 10.0 to 10.5. So much has changed in terms of looks and feel. Now, in terms of anything creative, the only thing I have done on this was some DV and VHS tape rendering and editing. So I would kind of load up Final Cut Express or iMovie HD, hook up my old camcorder, and you know, import some DV footage and edit it. But I decided that my PowerBook G4, which was way faster, was a better candidate. This would just take too long, but you know, that's what it would do back in the days, and that's what it was meant to do. It would be a professional machine in O2, and it cost over $2,300 when it was new, so that's a lot of money. And I bought this only for $50 with its box and keyboard and everything, except the OS discs. So you know, it's quite a decrease in value, and of course it just decreases more. This is the PowerMac G4 Quicksilver. I hope you like the in-depth look of it. These have been around the world zillion times. They are very cheap, and a lot of people, you know, just throw them away, which is a shame because they're just so cool. If I could add anything in my future reviews, please let me know. Again, this is a very in-depth look. I don't know how long the entire video was, but it's just something different I wanted to do, and I think it turned out pretty good. So if you want to know anything more about the PowerMac, just write it down in the comments. Also, look up the channel for some PowerMac videos. I made a ton of videos with this, either with Linux or other older OS X, and hardware upgrade series, all there. Just check it out if you're interested. Now with all of this, my mates, thank you for watching and see you later.